Hello and welcome to the Source One podcast. Consider us your source for the latest procurement, supply management, and strategic sourcing insights. Anytime, anywhere.
So Mike, before we get started, would you mind introducing yourself and telling me a little bit about your role at Source One?
Yeah, no problem. Again, Mike Croasdale. I'm an associate director at Source One. I head up our MRO business vertical here. So I got started at Source One actually, I guess about 7 years ago now. I started as an intern and actually was working on doing some billing work within the MRO category, and then gradually kind of grew to the MRO sourcing and then picked it up relatively quickly and grew into the category and ended up becoming kind of the category lead here and subject matter expert at Source One.
And what exactly does the MRO category entail? I know it stands for maintenance, repair, and operations. But
yeah, so some people and some companies kind of use it as a bucket for everything under the sun, but in reality, it's kind of the parts, supplies, and services that go into maintaining the operations for your facilities. Mm-hmm. Think of it as kind of the nuts and bolts and everything that goes along with kind of the installation.
And what would you say makes MRO such a unique, challenging spend category? Is it the breadth of subcategories? Yeah,
so there's kind of a combination of things that make it a very challenging top-level category to work with. The first being the number of subcategories, like you mentioned, underneath the MRO realm. So you can have everything from fasteners and fittings that are off the shelf to complex pumps and motors that have been customized for your specific operations. What makes it very challenging is just the overall number of SKUs and parts that are associated with the category, as well as the non-repeatable nature of some of the purchases. It's not every single year that you're going to have a certain item break that goes into your operations, and it's hard to kind of control that, so it becomes a bit unmanageable, as well as just the number of users and purchasers within the organization that have purchasing power. Because of the I need it now nature of the MRO category, basically there's going to be every facility manager, every even employee for the facility managers that are able to make purchasing decisions. So it's very hard to wrap your hands around and control.
Mm-hmm. So it's obviously a uniquely challenging category. Would you say it's a uniquely important category to the business? And does that depend on the industry?
Yeah, I mean, without proper MRO management, businesses wouldn't be able to run, but it's something that can tend to go unnoticed. It's like, people are thinking about either the end product or end service. No one's really thinking about the day-to-day maintenance of a facility or operation. So it does kind of get swept under the rug sometimes, but it's critical to the actual production.
So you mentioned that sometimes it can go unnoticed or fall by the wayside. Do you think most organizations recognize the importance of their MRO spend management?
They do recognize it. However, the actual management of it is a bit questionable because they're like, oh, it's too hard to manage. I know that it needs to be done, and I'm going to leave it up to kind of the facility managers and those maintenance type guys to figure it out, which means that you're going to have a ton of different suppliers. Nothing's really standardized because they're making decisions at the location level. And yeah, they need to make those decisions to keep their facility running, but are they the most cost-conscious decisions or the best decisions for the organization? Not necessarily.
Mm-hmm. So how else would you characterize the way organizations approach spend in this category? Is you say that like it's what looks like the right thing in the moment without taking time to actually analyze the spend. Would you say that's true?
Yeah, it either goes two ways. The first being like the one that I mentioned where the organization's just like, it's too challenging to centralize this, so I'm going to just let the facility managers kind of make the decisions here. Mm-hmm. Or they go the complete opposite approach where they're like, we have to centralize it. It's got to get centralized. We need this under our purview. And they try to shove like a one-size-fits-all supplier down the throats of all the facility managers who are like, I can't use this. This doesn't work for me. So, the proper management of it is finding a happy medium between the two, but typically organizations either fall to one side or the other.
Mm-hmm. And that kind of leads into my next question. Are there any misconceptions about the category? You mentioned the centralization is sometimes seen as a one-size-fits-all strategy. Are there any other worst practices that you've seen clients mistake for sustainable strategies?
Yeah, there's a number of things that the most common is that, well, I can't manage MRO because nothing's repeatable. Mm-hmm. But the reality is that you can identify trends over periods of time. Like, for example, maybe you're not going to be purchasing the same exact component year over year, but guess what? You do have a preferred manufacturer. Let's take conveyors, for example. All of your conveyor systems, most of them were purchased from the same manufacturer, which means that the replacement parts, it's going to be the same OEM, or there's a comparable alternate that you can standardize and utilize. So there are ways to look at it, and I understand that not everything's repeatable, but there's going to be consistent subcategories or consistent manufacturers, and being able to take the spend data and identifying those trends is kind of key to unlocking that misconception.
And what are some other common issues with the category that you've observed in your time working in it?
I think one of the biggest issues is when you do identify a solution that does work for a company, just because the sheer amount of users and purchasers, the adoption rate can be pretty slow. So things can get challenging to implement because it's hard to touch every stakeholder and get the point across that you need to make. So and there are people that take their job seriously, which is good, and they'll shop every part. Mm-hmm. And maybe I didn't find the lowest cost for a given item, but I know that that's the lowest cost supplier overall. And a lot of times people can't really wrap their head around that and are stuck on shopping every individual item and don't realize that I leveraged all of the spend in order to get you the best pricing overall on the items that you're using like day to day. But that means that you also have to drive those purchases that are maybe slightly higher cost with the preferred supplier to that supplier. So I that can be a really challenging issue, and sometimes that rogue spend can get really high unless there are control mechanisms in place.
Mm-hmm. You've been listening to the Source One podcast. For more strategic sourcing and procurement insights every day, visit our blog, The Strategic Sorcerer. Want to provide feedback or suggest a topic for a future episode? Let us know at prrequest@sourceoneinc.com. Thanks for listening.